If I Google kobold, I get this. But in Japan, kobolds look like this. Why? And I should say that kobolds can look very different across different franchises. Here is a World of Warcraft kobold, for example. Here's a kobold from the TV show Carnival Row. Yeah. This is a kobold from the Final Fantasy franchise. In fact, there are many different versions of a kobold. But this is an original kobold from German folklore. You know that franchise. So how did we get from this to this? And why did Japan go to this? Well, we first have to talk about what a kobold actually started out as. So most of the information we get on the original kobolds was that they were little pointy-eared creatures that, while generally were well-intentioned, could easily turn into an angry, mischievous little dude. In fact, I got some serious gremlin vibes during this research. They were often seen as spirits that could shapeshift into pretty much anything they wanted, including the elements, and often were described as pranksters and tricksters, but only if you annoyed them, like me. So, it is believed that the word kobold comes from the Greek koboloi, little guys tied to the god Dionysus, the god of winemaking, orchards, fruit, vegetation, fertility, festivity, insanity, ritual madness, religious ecstasy, and theatre, aka the god of fun. But in the 13th century, the German people got hold of the idea and the name eventually turned into kobold. In Germanic myth, there were three main types of kobold. A household kobold, who was a helpful, invisible spirit that would just serve the family. A little bit like Dobby the house elf from Lord of the Rings. There were also minor kobolds. Not children, but like digging holes, miners. These were less friendly than the household kobolds, but mostly just, chilled underground and mined for shiny things. It's said that the ore kobold is named after them, because apparently cobalt was like a pain in the bum to mine and would cause problems that miners then blamed on cobalt. And finally, there were sea kobolds. They would be helpful to sailors at sea, but if a captain saw one on a dock before setting sail, it was seen as a bad omen. Anyway, a lot of these ideas of kobolds got more and more muddled over time till Gary Gygax came along in 1977 and put them in a little-known book called The Monster Manual and solidified them for generations to come as a particular type of creature. Hairless humanoids with small horns and aggressive personalities who like to live in dark forests or underground. They were kind of like goblins with, and this is important, dog-like voices. And the original image of the D&D kobold did look a bit like a lizard, but also a bit like a dog. Then as D&D aged and changed with new additions, so did the kobold, slowly becoming more and more lizard-like to the point that we are at now. These little lizard lads. This is officially what a kobold is, as far as D&D is concerned. And nowadays, a lot of other media copies this idea. No longer when you ask someone to think of a kobold, do they think of an invisible, helpful, if not a little mischievous spirit? No. I think if you ask someone in North America or Europe to describe a kobold now, you get a description of a little reptile man, probably holding a spear and screaming into the sky. And it's not just the looks, but the idea of their personalities and culture that has drastically changed too. In D&D at least, kobolds are these little critters who travel in packs, are relatively weak, and usually burrow and live underground, often under large cities. And they are actually very good at what they do. Other species even enlist the help of them to go under their big cities and help carve out and create sewage networks. Kobolds are also pretty savvy tinkerers and creators. Think the MacGyver of D&D species, or that part in Iron Man 1 where he's in a cave. And when they have numbers and time, they can prove to be able to set up formidable ambushes using tactics and traps. And note to self there, tactics and traps is a good name for a TTRPG supplement book, if it's not taken already. Join my Patreon if you want to one day maybe see me make that book. But there are plenty, and I mean a surprising amount of YouTube videos already out there all about D&D kobolds. Some of them are surprisingly long, so I don't want to go too deep into that side of things. What I want to get more into is, what the hell is this? So Delicious in Dungeon is an anime on Netflix right now that is obviously heavily inspired by fantasy RPGs. And if it's not inspired directly by D&D, I think it has definitely been inspired by other games that were inspired by D&D. So much of D&D's world and systems can be seen throughout the show, from how its monsters work, to how magic works, even to how the main adventuring party interacts with each other and their world. There was one major difference that stood out to me, however. As I said earlier in this anime, kobolds are doggos. And this is the case throughout a couple of different franchises in Japan. Kobolds are dogs, and the reason for this can be traced back to one game, one constant through time and space. The year is 1981. I am -9 years old, and a brand new computer RPG series just comes out in North America. On this, it's called Wizardry, Proving Grounds of the Mad Overlord. This RPG was apparently heavily inspired by D&D, but it took kobolds, and instead of going down the lizard route, they went down the dog route. And this Wizardry franchise span out into multiple games, and while its popularity in North America eventually died out, it turned out to continue to rise in popularity in Japan. And while kobolds got more reptilian with each D&D edition, in Japan, they got more dog-like with each Wizardry game. And to date, there have been 9 American Wizardry games, and like 39 Japanese Wizardry games. And this Wizardry franchise influenced huge gaming franchises like Final Fantasy and Dragon's Quest. So yeah, it was huge. And that's why kobolds look like dogs in Japan. Ryoko Kui, the creator of Delicious in Dungeon, has also said that she grew up watching her dad play the Wizardry games, and this inspired the monster design in Delicious in Dungeon. But this got me thinking, what do kobolds look like in Wizardry games? How do they act? Are other D&D inspired monsters wildly different in these games? What does a Wizardry game even play like? Well, thanks to my patrons, without their consent, I used their money to buy the very first Wizardry game remake. And then I played it. Link to my Patreon in the description, by the way, if you want me to waste your money too. So the Wizardry game I bought is a remake, so it does have all new visuals. The original looked like this. So as you can see, the graphics are way better in this new one. But I figured I would play this till I ran into a kobold, just to see how it looks in the remake. And after coming across a bunch of random men, I finally found some kobolds. And they look like they could be pretty reptilian, actually. But it's hard because I don't know how they looked in the original 1981 game. I've been scouring the web to find footage, but to no avail. Interestingly, after continuing to play Wizardry, I came across skeleton kobolds, and these guys do look like dog skeletons. Okay, so I just found a playthrough of the original Wizardry 1 game on the YouTube channel Planet Evans, and kobolds look like this. And by the way, undead kobolds in the original looks like this. That's undead kobolds on the left, living kobolds on the right. And in Wizardry 2, this is how they looked again. I went down a whole rabbit hole of retro gaming footage on YouTube and got pretty lost. It appears that a lot of these games got remakes, and it's in the remakes that the kobolds started to look like dogs, not the originals. So what I wanted to do was get a list of all the Wizardry games to date and get footage of kobolds in each one, originals and remakes, so that we can see exactly how and when they started to become more dog-like. But that's proving to be a lot more difficult than I thought. I'm gonna continue to investigate this because I'm surprisingly invested now. But for the purposes of this video, kobolds started out like this in Wizardry 1, as frogs, fundamentally. Then slowly, or maybe fastly, who knows, sequel after sequel and remake after remake turned into these dogs. This is from Wizardry Online. I'm sure more knowledgeable people than me will let me know if I'm wrong about anything in the comments, and if anyone has any other information about the Wizardry creature design changes, please get in touch. But from what I can see, D&D made kobolds originally as half dog, half lizards, and the Wizardry games took them and inexplicably ran in the direction of kobolds as dogs. The games blew up in Japan, and yeah, now we have both dog kobolds and lizard kobolds. And there's a good chance I'll be streaming Wizardry live as this video comes out, by the way. So if you're watching this video on the day of release, hop over to my live stream on YouTube and say hi. But before I sign off, I want to make this video mean something. So what if kobolds look like dogs in Japan? We have lizards, right? That's the D&D kobold. Well, not necessarily. I figured this little situation opens up some cool possibilities for my D&D games, and maybe yours too, if you like the idea of it. 2 different types of kobolds. The first being a classic D&D kobold. The lizard lads live underground, great inventors, like shiny things, and like to mine. Makes sense because we had the miner kobolds from German folklore, which I can see being pretty similar to these guys. But we also have the sea kobolds from German folklore. Kobolds that live on the coasts and help out on ships at sea. In my games, I'm going to put these kobolds in there, sea kobolds, and I'm going to make them the dog kobolds, very similar to the lizard mining kobolds, but with a slightly different stat block. You see, the lizard kobolds have sunlight sensitivity, while in sunlight the kobold has disadvantage on attack rolls as well as on wisdom perception checks that rely on sight. And this makes sense with them living underground and all, but obviously the dog sea kobolds would not have this issue, so we can remove that from the stat block completely. Then to balance it out, we can also remove dark vision. I don't think the dog kobolds would have that. The lizard kobolds also have pack tactics. The kobold has advantage on an attack roll against a creature if at least one of the kobold's allies is within 5 feet of the creature and the ally isn't incapacitated. This does make sense for the dog kobolds as well, of course, since dogs are pack animals, so we can leave that in there. And everything else can just stay the same. This means that you can borrow from the history of kobolds in Germanic folklore, you can borrow from Japanese media and create a brand new type of kobold that does not affect the kobolds already in the game. In WotC's words, it's backwards compatible, and you get to have little humanoid dogs running around your port cities dressed as pirates. So it truly is a win-win. Thanks for watching.